This is Waziyatawin, and I'll be reading from my 2008 book, What Does Justice Look Like? The Struggle for Liberation in Dakota Homeland. A note to listeners. This is a slightly updated and revised version of my 2008 book, What Does Justice Look Like? I engaged this project to initiate dialogue around outstanding injustices experienced by Dakota people, injustices that the dominant society has yet to both acknowledge and address. While my perspective is always shaped from my identity as a Waziyatawin Dakota from the Pejihu to Zizik Api Makoche, dwellers among the leaves from the place where they dig for yellow medicine, my perspective is not reflective of all people from my community, my council fire, or my nation. Thus, I do not claim to be speaking for all Waziyatawin people, all people from yellow medicine, or all Dakota people. I am just one person offering suggestions for an alternative vision of the future that would allow Dakota people to reclaim our homeland and live once again as a free and independent people. The ideas contained here developed from multiple life experiences. First, they stem from my critical reading of the history of our Minnesota homeland, based on my experience as someone who grew up in the Dakota oral tradition and someone who studied the academic discipline of history. Second, they stem from my awareness of the oppression that Dakota people continue to experience every single day. Severe oppression did not end in the 19th century as many believe. Rather, settler society continues the oppression of Dakota people through the perpetuation of colonialism and the ongoing denial of our inherent rights as Indigenous people of this land. Third, these ideas stem from my beliefs about what is right, what is just, and what is good. Finally, and most importantly, the ideas included here are an expression of my hope for the future. I thank all of the people who supported the creation of this volume through their contributions to Living Justice Press. They include the Minnesota Humanities Center, the HRK Foundation, and the Butler Foundation. These institutions do not necessarily support all the views contained in this book, but they do support the need to give voice to the often ignored perspectives of Indigenous peoples. I also want to thank Denise Breton and everyone at Living Justice Press for believing in this project. It's so essential for Dakota people to have an outlet to express our critical perspectives in our own voices and in our own ways. Nina Wopira Chichiapi. In writing this book, I must emphasize that I do not intend it to be a blueprint that everyone must follow. Rather, it's my hope that it will serve as a jumping-off point for discussions in both Dakota and white communities about how we might all achieve a state of peaceful coexistence with each other and with the land we inhabit. No one will agree with everything written here. However, I hope all of you will find at least some truth you can embrace that will lead you to join us in the Dakota struggle for justice. This is Waziyatawin in Bideota, Otue, Minneapolis, Minnesota Makoche, May 18th, 2024. Introduction. Envisioning Justice in Minnesota. Quote, until America begins to build a moral record in her dealings with the Indian people, she should not try to fool the rest of the world about her intentions on other continents. America has always been a militantly imperialistic world power, eagerly grasping for economic control over weaker nations. There has not been a time since the founding of the Republic when the motives of this country were innocent. Unquote, from Vine Deloria Jr. In 2008, the state of Minnesota was celebrating 150 years of statehood. Parades, festivities, and much hoopla were accompanying this important anniversary in Minnesota history. The state government, institutions, and appointed Sesquicentennial Commission were asking all of us to reflect on what Minnesotans have gained in the last century and a half, as well as what progress Minnesotans have achieved. Minnesota's original inhabitants, the Dakota Oyate, or Nation, have a different perspective on those 150 years. Rather than measuring the years by what we have gained, Dakota people more often measure what we have lost. We ask ourselves such questions as, what does it mean that settler society established the state of Minnesota at the expense of Indigenous people? What does it mean that Minnesota's citizens advocated, supported, and perpetrated genocidal policies so they could obtain Dakota Homeland? What does it mean that Dakota extermination and forced removal, as well as Ho-Chunk removal, were the price of Minnesota's statehood? And what does it mean in the 21st century, or any time Minnesotans celebrate the establishment of the state, despite its shameful historical legacy and the harmful consequences to whole nations of Indigenous peoples? Addressing harms internationally. We pose these questions at a time when the international community is beginning to address both the historical harms perpetrated against Indigenous peoples globally and the contemporary harms we suffer because
Sample complete. Ready to continue?